Nobody ever chose the rejected Omega, until the Alpha King risked everything. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin today's emotional journey, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our new stories. It only takes a second, it is completely free, and your support helps us continue bringing you unforgettable tales filled with courage, hope, and destiny. We truly appreciate every one of you. Before the story begins, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. We always enjoy seeing our incredible community come together from across the globe. Now let us begin today's story. Sometimes the soul everyone rejects is the very soul destiny has been protecting all along. Aurora Whitmore stood alone beneath the silver light of the full moon, surrounded by hundreds of wolves gathered for the moon-choosing ceremony. Yet she had never felt more invisible. The great stone plaza at the heart of Silver Ridge Pack shimmered beneath rows of glowing lanterns, while ancient banners bearing the crest of every noble family fluttered in the cool autumn breeze. Music drifted through the air, mixed with laughter, hopeful whispers, and the quiet excitement that always surrounded the sacred ceremony where unmated wolves discovered the partners chosen for them by the moon goddess. Families smiled proudly as young alphas and omegas stepped forward one by one, their bonds forming beneath the blessing of moonlight. Aurora watched each joyful moment with a gentle smile she had practiced for years, even though her own heart grew heavier with every passing minute. At 22, she had attended this ceremony 4 years in a row. Every year ended exactly the same. No one stepped forward. No one looked into her eyes with recognition. No one believed the quiet Omega standing near the edge of the crowd could possibly belong beside them. She was known throughout Silver Ridge by only one painful title: the rejected Omega. Even before she had been formally rejected by the Alpha originally promised to her family, whispers had followed her everywhere. They said her scent was too faint. They said the moon goddess had overlooked her. They said she carried no remarkable gift. Aurora never argued. Instead, she spent her days helping elderly wolves gather firewood, tending injured forest animals, and preparing meals for families who barely noticed she was there. Kindness had become her language because it was the only thing no one could take away from her. As another young couple celebrated their newly discovered bond, Aurora quietly stepped farther into the shadows, hoping not to draw unnecessary attention. Unfortunately, attention found her anyway. A familiar voice echoed across the gathering. Still waiting, Alpha Tristan Hale approached with several members of his future council, wearing an expression that blended confidence with quiet pity. Years earlier, Tristan had publicly rejected the bond everyone expected them to share, believing his future demanded someone stronger, someone worthy of becoming Luna beside the future Alpha King. Aurora met his gaze without bitterness. "Congratulations," she said sincerely after noticing the elegant young woman standing proudly beside him. "I hope your future brings you happiness." Tristan hesitated, surprised that she held no anger toward him. Before he could answer, another wolf laughed softly nearby. "She says that every year," someone whispered. "Maybe next time the moon will finally remember her." Gentle laughter spread through the crowd, not cruel enough to be called bullying, yet sharp enough to remind Aurora exactly where she belonged. She lowered her eyes for only a moment before quietly turning away. Her mother had once told her that dignity meant leaving a room with the same grace whether people applauded or ignored you. Aurora intended to honor those words. As she reached the ancient oak standing beyond the ceremonial grounds, she paused beneath its wide branches and looked toward the enormous full moon hanging above the mountains. "If I truly have no place," she whispered softly, "then please help me become someone who can still bring light into another person's life." At that exact moment, hundreds of miles away inside the royal citadel, King Lucian Ashthorn abruptly stopped. During an important council meeting, a strange warmth passed through the ancient royal crest resting over his heart, something it had not done in generations. Every candle in the chamber flickered at once. The oldest elder slowly rose from his seat, his face losing all color. "Your Majesty," he whispered with quiet disbelief, "the royal moon blood has awakened." Lucian turned toward the distant southern horizon, his silver eyes filled not with fear, but with profound curiosity, as though somewhere beyond the endless forests, a single forgotten heartbeat had quietly changed the fate of every kingdom. Aurora Whitmore left the celebration long before the music faded into the night, following the quiet forest path that had become her refuge after every moon-choosing ceremony. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine and fallen leaves, and the moonlight filtered gently through towering trees, painting silver patterns across the winding trail. She did not cry. Years of disappointment had taught her that tears could not change a heart already determined to look away. Instead, she focused on the small blessings that still surrounded her. A family of rabbits crossed the path without fear. Tiny lantern bugs floated through the darkness like drifting stars. Somewhere nearby, an owl called softly into the peaceful night. Aurora smiled to herself. Even when people failed to see her, nature never seemed to turn away. By sunrise, she reached the modest stone cottage where she had lived alone since her parents passed away several years earlier. The little home rested beside a clear stream on the edge of the forest, surrounded by a small garden filled with herbs, wildflowers, and vegetables she carefully tended throughout the seasons. She had built this quiet life with her own hands, never expecting recognition, only hoping to leave every place she touched a little kinder than she had found it. After watering the garden, she carried a basket of fresh bread she had baked before dawn toward the neighboring cottages where several elderly wolves lived by themselves. They welcomed her with warm smiles and grateful hearts, though many quietly wondered why someone with so little always seemed willing to give so much. Aurora never stayed long enough to receive praise. She simply wished them a peaceful morning before continuing on her way. Far to the north, inside the magnificent royal citadel, concern spread through the ancient council chamber. The oldest elders stood around a circular table carved from white marble, each studying the faint silver glow radiating from the royal moon crest resting before King Lucian Ashthorn. The crest had remained dormant for generations, responding only during moments that shaped the future of every kingdom. Elder Benedict slowly placed his hand upon the ancient symbol before speaking in a careful voice. "Your Majesty, every historical record agrees. The royal moon blood awakens only when an ancient law is about to be challenged." Lucian remained silent as he gazed through the tall palace windows toward the distant southern mountains. "What law?" he finally asked. The chamber grew unusually quiet. Another elder carefully opened a weathered scroll preserved inside a crystal case. "The first oath of the crown," she answered. "It forbids an Alpha King from choosing any Omega who has already been rejected through the sacred bond." Lucian turned slowly toward the ancient document. "And if that law is broken?" The elder hesitated before answering. "Then the crown itself may reject its king." No one spoke after those words. Every advisor understood what such a sacrifice would mean. An Alpha King ruled not only through authority, but through the blessing carried by the royal moon blood. Losing that blessing could cost him his throne, his legacy, and the trust of every allied pack. Yet instead of fear, a quiet curiosity appeared in Lucian's silver eyes. "Who created this law?" he asked. The elders exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Benedict admitted, "No living wolf remembers. The law existed long before the first kingdoms were established." At that very moment, Aurora paused beside the forest stream after noticing a frightened young Omega child sitting alone beneath an old willow tree, clutching a torn basket and trying to gather scattered apples that had rolled across the grass. Without hesitation, Aurora knelt beside the child, helping collect every piece of fruit while offering the same gentle smile she gave everyone, whether they remembered her name or not. High above the forest, hidden beyond the drifting clouds, the full moon shone just a little brighter, as though quietly witnessing a simple act of kindness that would soon rewrite the oldest law in the history of the wolves. The little Omega girl looked up with tearful eyes as Aurora placed the last apple back into the repaired basket and gently brushed a few leaves from the child's sleeve. "Thank you," the girl whispered shyly. Everyone else was in a hurry. Aurora smiled with quiet warmth. Sometimes slowing down is the fastest way to help someone. The child laughed softly before running toward her waiting grandmother, who offered Aurora a grateful nod from across the meadow. Aurora simply waved and continued along the narrow woodland path, unaware that someone hidden among the ancient trees had witnessed every moment. High above the forest floor, dressed in a simple dark traveling cloak instead of royal attire, King Lucian Ashthorn stood silently upon a rocky overlook. No crown rested upon his head. No royal crest marked his clothing. Anyone passing by would have mistaken him for an ordinary traveler. Yet his silver eyes never left Aurora as she disappeared deeper into the woods. Elder Benedict stepped quietly beside him. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "you have now seen what every report described. She asks for nothing. She expects nothing. She simply gives." Lucian remained thoughtful. The reports did not capture everything. The elder frowned. "What do you mean?" Lucian continued, watching the distant path. "Most people are kind when they believe someone important is watching. She believes no one sees her." Silence settled between them. Finally, Lucian spoke the words that caused even the experienced elder to hesitate. "Prepare my horse. We leave for Silver Ridge before sunset." Benedict's expression tightened with concern. "If the council discovers your destination, questions will follow." Lucian answered without turning. "Then let them ask." By late afternoon, the quiet routine inside Silver Ridge had already returned to normal. Most wolves had forgotten the ceremony and resumed their daily work. Aurora spent the remainder of the day helping repair the roof of an elderly widow whose cottage had suffered damage during the previous week's heavy rain. She balanced carefully on the wooden ladder while replacing loose shingles one at a time. Her hands were rough from honest work, yet every movement reflected patience rather than complaint. The widow smiled kindly. "Child, you always help everyone else. Who helps you?" Aurora paused for only a second before smiling back. "Perhaps kindness has a way of returning when we least expect it." The elderly woman gently squeezed Aurora's hand. "I hope whoever finally sees your heart understands what a rare gift it is." As evening approached, the peaceful rhythm of the village changed unexpectedly. A line of elegant black carriages bearing the royal crest rolled through the main entrance beneath the astonished eyes of every resident. Royal guards dressed in polished silver armor took their positions with perfect discipline, though none displayed unnecessary force. Curious whispers spread through the streets almost immediately. "Why would the Alpha King visit our village? Has something happened? Is there a royal inspection?" Even Alpha Tristan Hale looked genuinely surprised as he hurried toward the village square to greet the unexpected guests. Moments later, Lucian Ashthorn stepped gracefully from the lead carriage. The crowd immediately lowered their heads in respectful silence. Tall, composed, and carrying the effortless confidence of someone born to lead, he acknowledged the gathering with a calm nod before speaking. His voice remained steady, neither loud nor dramatic, yet every word carried across the square with remarkable clarity. "I have come seeking one person." Excitement spread through the crowd. Many assumed he had arrived to meet the strongest alpha families or the village elders. Instead, Lucian's silver eyes calmly swept across the faces before him until they settled on Tristan. "Tell me," he asked with quiet certainty, "where can I find the rejected Omega named Aurora Whitmore?" The silence that followed seemed to stop the entire village from breathing. Aurora Whitmore was carefully lowering herself from the wooden ladder after securing the final roof shingle when the distant sound of carriage wheels echoed across the quiet village. Curious voices quickly filled the streets as neighbors stepped outside their homes, wondering what could possibly bring the royal procession to Silver Ridge. Aurora thanked the elderly widow for allowing her to help, brushed the dust from her simple blue dress, and quietly carried her tools toward the shed behind the cottage. She had no reason to believe the unexpected visitors had anything to do with her. Royal families never traveled across the kingdom searching for forgotten Omegas. Meanwhile, in the village square, every conversation had fallen silent after King Lucian Ashthorn calmly spoke Aurora's name. Alpha Tristan Hale struggled to hide his surprise. "Your Majesty," he replied respectfully, "may I ask why the crown seeks someone of such little importance?" Lucian's expression remained composed, though his silver eyes reflected quiet disappointment rather than anger. "Importance is not determined by reputation," he answered. "It is revealed by character." Several elders exchanged uncertain glances. None dared question the Alpha King directly, yet confusion spread rapidly through the gathered crowd. One elderly council member stepped forward and bowed. "Aurora lives on the eastern edge of the village near the old forest stream. She keeps mostly to herself." Lucian nodded once. "Thank you." Without another word, he turned and began walking toward the narrow woodland road instead of waiting for anyone to escort him. Elder Benedict followed closely behind, lowering his voice as they left the square. Your Majesty, every step you take toward her brings you closer to breaking the first oath. Lucian continued walking without hesitation. Perhaps the oath deserves to be questioned. The elder sighed quietly. The council will never accept such reasoning. Lucian looked toward the towering pines ahead, where soft evening light filtered through the branches. Then they may judge me after they understand why I made the choice. Back at the cottage, Aurora finished organizing her tools before noticing hurried footsteps approaching along the garden path. The little Omega girl she had helped earlier that morning arrived completely out of breath, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Miss Aurora, she called, trying to catch her breath. The Alpha King is here. Aurora smiled gently, assuming the child had become carried away by village rumors. The Alpha King visits many places, she replied kindly. I am sure he has important business. The little girl shook her head so quickly that loose strands of hair danced across her face. No, he asked for you. Aurora froze. For a brief moment, she wondered whether she had misunderstood. He asked for me? The child nodded eagerly. Everyone heard him. Aurora looked toward the distant village rooftops where the royal banners could still be seen moving gently above the trees. Her first thought was not excitement, but concern. Had she unknowingly broken some law? Had someone falsely accused her of something? Before another question could form in her mind, calm footsteps approached the edge of the garden. Aurora slowly turned. Standing just beyond the white wooden gate was a tall man wearing an elegant dark coat marked with the royal crest. The setting sun illuminated his silver eyes with a quiet warmth that felt strangely familiar despite the fact they had never met. He made no effort to cross the gate uninvited. Instead, he respectfully inclined his head. Miss Aurora Whitmore, he said in a calm, gentle voice. I apologize for arriving without notice. May I have a few moments of your time? Aurora stood speechless. No king had ever asked permission before entering anyone's life, and in that single unexpected moment, everything she believed about power quietly began to change. Aurora opened the small wooden gate herself, still unable to understand why the Alpha King of every united pack stood patiently outside her humble cottage instead of summoning her to the village square. She lowered her eyes respectfully and offered a graceful bow. Your Majesty, I am honored by your visit. Lucian returned the gesture with equal courtesy, something Elder Benedict noticed immediately. Few rulers ever bowed to ordinary citizens, yet Lucian believed respect was never measured by rank. Thank you for receiving me, he replied warmly. I hope I have not interrupted your evening. Aurora glanced toward the basket of freshly picked herbs resting beside the garden. Not at all. I was simply preparing tomorrow's medicines for several of our older neighbors. Lucian's silver eyes drifted across the modest cottage, the flourishing vegetable garden, and the neatly repaired wooden fence. Everything reflected quiet care instead of wealth. Nothing had been built for admiration. Everything had been built to serve others. May we walk for a moment? He asked gently. Aurora nodded. Together they followed the narrow trail beside the clear forest stream while Elder Benedict remained respectfully behind, allowing the conversation to remain private. The soft sound of flowing water filled the peaceful silence until Lucian finally spoke. For several days I have heard many stories about you. Aurora looked genuinely surprised. About me? Yes. He smiled faintly. Not from nobles. Not from council members. From widows, children, travelers, healers, and elderly wolves who all remembered the same thing. Aurora lowered her gaze. I only tried to help where I could. Lucian stopped beside the stream and looked toward the sunlight dancing across the water. That is exactly what every one of them said. Aurora studied his calm expression, searching for the reason behind his visit. Your Majesty, she asked carefully, why would someone like you travel so far to speak with someone like me? Lucian remained silent for several heartbeats before answering honestly. Because I wanted to see whether kindness spoken about by others truly belonged to the person herself. Aurora laughed softly, almost embarrassed. That seems like a long journey for a simple question. Some questions deserve long journeys, Lucian replied. Before Aurora could respond, hurried footsteps echoed through the trees. A royal messenger approached with visible concern before bowing deeply. Your Majesty, the High Council requests your immediate return to the royal citadel. The elders have learned where you are. Elder Benedict quietly closed his eyes, already anticipating what would follow. Lucian accepted the sealed letter, calmly breaking the wax seal before reading the brief message. His expression never changed, but Aurora noticed the faint seriousness settling in his silver eyes. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Lucian folded the letter carefully. "The council believes my presence here places the crown at unnecessary risk." Aurora immediately stepped back. "Then you should return. I would never wish to become the cause of trouble for your kingdom." Lucian looked directly into her eyes, and for the first time she noticed a quiet sadness beneath his calm confidence. "Aurora," he said gently, "sometimes avoiding trouble also means avoiding truth." At that exact moment, hundreds of miles away inside the royal citadel, every member of the High Council gathered beneath the ancient crown of the first king. One by one, the sacred crystals surrounding the throne began glowing with brilliant silver light before a deep voice echoed through the silent chamber. "If the Alpha King willingly chooses the rejected Omega, the first oath shall be broken, the royal moon blood shall be tested, and the crown itself will decide whether sacrifice is worthy of a greater destiny." Every elder stared upward in stunned silence, realizing the ancient prophecy they had feared for centuries had finally begun. A gentle rain began to fall before dawn, covering the forest in a soft silver mist as King Lucian Ashthorn prepared to return to the royal citadel. His royal carriage waited at the edge of the woodland path, but he remained beside the quiet stream a little longer, watching Aurora carefully water the small herb garden before she noticed he was still there. She looked surprised to see him after believing he had already departed. "I thought the council needed you immediately," she said with quiet concern. Lucian smiled gently. "They do." Aurora tilted her head slightly. "Then why are you still here?" He looked toward the peaceful garden filled with flowers, herbs, and vegetables that had clearly been cultivated through patience, rather than abundance. "Because there was one question I wished to ask before I returned." Aurora folded her hands calmly. "What is it?" Lucian hesitated only for a moment. "If the world offered you everything you had ever hoped for, what would you ask in return?" Aurora considered the question carefully. She did not answer quickly, as though she wanted every word to be honest. Finally, she smiled with quiet sincerity. "I would ask that no one ever feel forgotten simply because they were different." Lucian remained silent. He had expected many possible answers. Wealth, recognition, a higher place within the pack, even the chance to reverse the painful rejection that had shaped her life. Instead, she spoke only about protecting others from loneliness. Elder Benedict quietly lowered his eyes, realizing that every report they had gathered had underestimated her heart. Lucian slowly nodded. "Thank you." Aurora looked slightly puzzled. "For asking. For answering exactly as yourself." Before she could respond, the royal messenger approached once more and respectfully bowed. "Your Majesty, the council has assembled every elder. They request your presence before sunset. They believe the ancient trial cannot be delayed any longer." Lucian acknowledged the message with calm composure before turning back toward Aurora. "I must leave now." She offered a gentle smile. "Then may the moon goddess guide your journey." Lucian stepped toward the waiting carriage before pausing unexpectedly. Without looking back, he quietly said, "There are moments when the future changes without asking anyone's permission. If such a day arrives, I hope you will remember that your kindness has already changed more lives than you know." Aurora watched the royal procession disappear through the morning mist until the final carriage vanished beyond the trees. She did not understand the meaning behind his words, yet something inside her heart felt strangely peaceful instead of uncertain. Hundreds of miles away, the royal citadel stood beneath dark gathering clouds as nobles, elders, and alpha leaders from every allied kingdom filled the magnificent Hall of Crowns. At the center of the chamber rested the ancient royal crown upon its marble pedestal, surrounded by 12 glowing moon crystals that had protected the first oath for countless generations. Lucian entered the hall with steady confidence, acknowledging every elder before taking his place. Elder Benedict stepped forward and addressed the assembly. "Your Majesty, according to the oldest laws, you now stand before the ancient trial. The crown asks only one question. Will you abandon your pursuit of the rejected Omega and preserve the first oath? Or will you continue toward her knowing that your throne, your royal moon blood, and your right to rule may all be taken from you forever?" Complete silence filled the chamber. Every eye turned toward the Alpha King. Lucian lifted his gaze to the ancient royal crown, whose silver light reflected across the hall like quiet moonlight upon still water. His answer came without hesitation, spoken calmly, yet carrying enough conviction to echo through every corner of the kingdom. A throne that demands I ignore a worthy soul is not a throne worthy of protecting. If compassion requires sacrifice, then I accept the cost. The instant his words faded, the royal crown released a brilliant column of silver light that rose through the ceiling toward the full moon above, and every elder realized the ancient trial had officially begun. Its conclusion echoed through the Hall of Crowns long after the silver light disappeared into the heavens. No elder spoke. No advisor challenged the Alpha King. They simply stood in stunned silence, realizing they had witnessed something no living generation had ever imagined. The ancient trial had accepted Lucian Ashtorn's declaration. Whether it would bless him or strip away everything he possessed remained unknown. Elder Benedict slowly approached the marble pedestal where the royal crown rested. Tiny cracks of silver light now shimmered across its ancient surface, unlike anything preserved in the oldest royal records. He carefully opened a weathered book that had remained sealed for centuries. As the pages turned by themselves, faded words slowly brightened beneath the moonlight streaming through the great windows. Benedict quietly read aloud, "When the crown trembles before compassion, the forgotten truth shall awaken beneath the first oath." The gathered elders exchanged uneasy glances. One younger advisor finally whispered, "What forgotten truth?" Before anyone could answer, every candle inside the chamber extinguished at once. A soft silver glow emerged from the center of the room, revealing an enormous ancient mural hidden beneath layers of polished stone. None of the living rulers had ever seen it before. The carving depicted the very first Alpha King standing beside an unknown Omega, not upon a throne, but beneath the moon goddess herself. Across the bottom of the mural, an inscription slowly became visible. The crown was never created to rule above love. It was created to protect it. Hundreds of miles away, Aurora Whitmore spent her morning exactly as she always had. She visited the elderly widow whose roof they had repaired together, bringing fresh bread and warm herbal tea before walking toward the village school, where several children eagerly waited for her weekly storytelling hour. None of them cared that she had once been rejected. To them, she was simply Miss Aurora, the kind woman who always remembered every child's favorite story and every grandparent's birthday. As she finished reading beneath the old oak tree, one little boy raised his hand with innocent curiosity. "Miss Aurora, do you think a king can become lonely?" The unexpected question made her smile thoughtfully. "I think anyone can become lonely if people only see the crown and forget the heart underneath." The children quietly considered her answer before happily returning to their games. Hidden beneath the shade of nearby pines, Lucian had arrived once again without ceremony, dressed in the same simple traveling cloak. He had not come to interrupt her. He only watched from a respectful distance as Aurora laughed with the children, patiently helping one little girl tie the ribbon in her hair after the bow had come undone. Elder Benedict stood beside him, speaking so quietly that only the king could hear. "Your Majesty, every visit strengthens the ancient trial. The crown is measuring not only your heart, but hers as well." Lucian nodded slowly. "Then let it continue." Benedict hesitated before asking the question, weighing heavily upon every elder. "If the trial ends as the prophecy warns, you may lose your throne forever. Do you truly accept that possibility?" Lucian watched Aurora wave goodbye to the children before gathering the empty baskets they had forgotten to carry home. His answer came with complete certainty. A kingdom survives because its people are loved, not because its king is feared. If I must surrender a crown to preserve that truth, then I lose nothing worth keeping. At that exact moment, the silver crest hidden beneath Lucian's traveling cloak grew warm against his chest. Far above the kingdom, the full moon briefly shone brighter than the midday sun, while deep beneath the royal citadel, a pair of immense stone doors untouched for 1,000 years slowly began to open on their own. The oldest guardian in the palace fell to one knee as a quiet voice echoed from the ancient chamber beyond. "Bring before us the king who chose compassion over power. The first crown remembers his name." The ancient stone doors beneath the royal citadel continued opening with a slow, echoing sound that seemed to awaken memories buried beneath centuries of silence. No servant, elder, or king had entered the hidden sanctuary since the earliest days of the First Kingdom, and even the oldest records described it only as the chamber of the first crown. King Lucian Ashthorn descended the winding staircase beside Elder Benedict, carrying no weapon and wearing no royal robes, only the same simple dark attire he had chosen when visiting Aurora. The deeper they walked, the quieter the world above seemed to become until only the gentle glow of silver crystals illuminated the ancient corridor. At the center of the chamber stood a magnificent white stone altar surrounded by 12 towering pillars carved with scenes from the earliest history of the wolves. Upon the altar rested a weathered crown unlike the brilliant royal crown above. It bore no jewels, no polished gold, only smooth silver marked by time and countless crescent symbols that shimmered softly beneath the moonlight, streaming through an opening high above. As Lucian approached, the chamber filled with a calm voice that carried neither judgment nor praise. "Why do you seek the one the world rejected?" Lucian did not search for the speaker. Instead, he placed one hand over his heart and answered honestly, "I do not seek someone rejected. I seek someone whose heart remained kind after rejection." The silver symbols surrounding the altar immediately brightened. The voice returned. "Would you surrender your crown for compassion? Yes. Would you surrender your name? If necessary. Would you surrender the throne itself?" Lucian lifted his eyes toward the ancient crown. A throne exists to protect people. If protecting one worthy soul requires surrendering it, then the throne has fulfilled its purpose. Silence settled across the chamber before a warm silver light gently surrounded the altar. Elder Benedict lowered himself respectfully, recognizing that the first crown had accepted every answer. Far away in Silver Ridge, Aurora spent the afternoon gathering herbs along the edge of the forest with several village children who happily followed her from one meadow to another. They laughed together as butterflies drifted across the wildflowers, and Aurora patiently taught them which plants could become medicine and which should remain untouched so they could continue feeding bees through the coming seasons. One little girl suddenly looked up toward the sky. "Miss Aurora," she whispered, "why does the moon shine during the daytime?" Aurora followed the child's gaze. High above the clouds, the pale outline of the full moon had unexpectedly appeared beneath the afternoon sun. Its silver glow was faint but unmistakable. She smiled softly without understanding why the sight filled her heart with peace instead of surprise. "Perhaps," she answered gently, "some lights appear early because someone far away needs hope." At that same moment, a soft breeze carried the fragrance of wild jasmine through the meadow, although the flowers had not yet bloomed. Every child paused, quietly enjoying the unexpected sweetness filling the air. Deep beneath the royal citadel, the ancient crown slowly rose from the white stone altar without anyone touching it. Instead of settling upon Lucian's head, it floated between him and the empty space before him as though waiting for someone unseen. The calm voice spoke once more. "The first crown cannot belong to one heart alone. Bring before us the woman who taught a king that compassion is greater than power. Only then shall the oldest promise be fulfilled." Lucian closed his eyes briefly, not with triumph, but with gratitude. For the first time since the ancient trial had begun, he understood that destiny had never asked him to choose between love and leadership. It had asked whether he possessed the wisdom to understand that one could never truly exist without the other. A gentle evening breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers as King Lucian Ashthorn arrived once more at Aurora Whitmore's quiet cottage, not with royal fanfare or ceremonial guards, but with Elder Benedict walking respectfully a few steps behind him. The village watched from a distance in silent curiosity, wondering why the Alpha King continued returning to the home of the Omega no one had ever chosen. Aurora stepped into her garden, surprised yet calm, her hand still carrying a basket of freshly gathered herbs. Lucian approached with the same humility that had marked every meeting between them. "Aurora," he said gently, "there is something I wish to show you, but the choice to come must belong entirely to you." She searched his silver eyes and found no command within them, only trust. "Will it place your kingdom in danger?" she asked quietly. Lucian smiled with quiet honesty. "Perhaps, but refusing to follow the truth would place it in even greater danger. Aurora looked toward the peaceful cottages surrounding them, then at the children laughing beneath the old oak tree where she had spent so many afternoons reading stories. Everything she loved existed in simple moments like these. Yet something deep inside her heart whispered that another path had quietly opened before her. She nodded. "Then I will come." Before sunrise the next morning, they entered the hidden chamber of the first crown together. The ancient silver crown still floated peacefully above the white stone altar, surrounded by gentle moonlight unlike anything Aurora had ever seen. As she stepped beside Lucian, the chamber became completely silent. The glowing symbols carved into every pillar awakened one after another, filling the sanctuary with soft silver light. The calm voice returned, carrying warmth instead of judgment. Two hearts stand before the first promise. Aurora instinctively lowered her head with respect. "I do not seek a throne," she whispered. "I only wish to become someone who leaves this world kinder than I found it." The chamber responded immediately. The ancient crown drifted away from Lucian and slowly descended until it hovered between them. Silver light spread across the floor, revealing forgotten words hidden beneath centuries of stone. Elder Benedict quietly read them aloud through tears of astonishment. "The greatest ruler is not the one who is chosen by power, but the one who chooses compassion when power offers another path." The crown did not settle upon Lucian alone. Instead, it released thousands of tiny silver lights that surrounded both of them before gently dissolving into the air above the sanctuary. Outside, the full moon shone brilliantly across every kingdom at once. The ancient royal crown resting in the Hall of Crowns transformed as its silver glow became warmer and brighter than ever before. Every elder felt the change. The first oath had not been broken. It had been fulfilled exactly as it was always meant to be understood. Lucian turned toward Aurora with gratitude shining in his eyes. "I believed I was risking everything to find you," he said softly. Aurora smiled, her voice filled with peaceful certainty. "Perhaps you were never losing everything. Perhaps you were only letting go of what was too small to carry what was always meant for you." Lucian placed one hand over his heart and bowed respectfully before her, not because she was above him, but because love freely chosen deserved honor above every title. Aurora returned the gesture with the same quiet grace. In that moment, the gathered elders finally understood that the strength of a kingdom had never depended upon an unbreakable crown. It depended upon the courage of those willing to protect kindness even when no reward was promised. As dawn painted the mountains with golden light, hope spread through every pack, and stories of the rejected Omega and the Alpha King who chose compassion over fear became the beginning of a new age. Far beyond the northern horizon, hidden beneath an untouched mountain valley, an immense stone gateway covered with ancient moon symbols slowly awakened beneath the first rays of sunrise, promising that the oldest secrets of the moon goddess were only beginning to reveal themselves to the world.